In the next 3 years, empathetic, this will either become the most powerful digital platform on Earth or the most expensive psychological miscalculation in modern tech history. And it all hinges on one bet made by Elon Musk. Most analysts think this is a battle against Meta, Google, or TikTok. It's not. It's a confrontation with something far older and far less flexible, the biological limits of the human brain. And history is merciless when powerful systems try to overpower human limits instead of designing around them. The Everything app sounds like destiny. One login, one interface. Your messages, your payments, your news, your investments, your identity compressed into a single digital command center. No more fragmentation, no more switching, total integration, total control. It feels efficient, it feels futuristic, but the most dangerous ideas in business always feel efficient at the beginning, because what looks like convenience on the surface can become cognitive overload underneath. There is a principle in systems psychology called the cognitive tax. It's the invisible energy your brain spends every time it changes roles. When you move from reading a political argument to sending money, from joking with friends to analyzing markets, from entertainment to risk calculation, each shift forces your brain to reload context, new rules, new emotional settings, new consequences. That reload isn't free. It consumes glucose, it consumes attention, and attention is the most limited resource in the digital economy. The human brain evolved for focused survival tasks: hunt, build, protect, one dominant objective at a time. It did not evolve to perform 5 conflicting social roles within the same minute. When context switching becomes too frequent, the nervous system interprets it as instability, and instability triggers withdrawal, not outrage, not rebellion. Withdrawal. Users don't announce their exit, they simply disengage. Think about the digital environments you already trust. You open WhatsApp for intimacy. The tone is personal, the stakes are emotional. You open LinkedIn for career positioning. Different mindset, different persona. You open Amazon to buy. Transactional, efficient, goal-oriented. Each of these platforms is a clean system, one dominant function, one psychological role, minimal identity conflict. Your brain knows exactly who it is supposed to be in each space. Now imagine compressing all those identities into one interface. In the Everything app, you are a friend, a professional, a consumer, an investor, and a public commentator simultaneously. The boundaries dissolve, the mental compartments collapse. Your private tone sits inches away from your financial risk. Your social argument sits next to your payment credentials. That is not simplification, that is role collision. And role collision creates friction. Friction is not dramatic, it's subtle. It's the extra second before you tap. It's the hesitation before you link your bank account. It's the small discomfort you can't articulate when your social feed sits beside your transaction history. But multiplied across millions of users, that hesitation becomes behavior, and behavior determines survival. We have seen this pattern before. People often say the iPhone killed Nokia. That's a convenient story. The truth is harsher. Nokia was already collapsing internally. Departments operated in silos. Executives hesitated to surface bad news. Software teams moved slower than market shifts. Decision-making accumulated layers. Internal friction hardened. By the time external disruption arrived, adaptation was no longer agile, it was paralyzed. The external shock didn't kill Nokia. It exposed the internal complexity that had already made it fragile. Consider Boeing. Public narratives focused on isolated failures, but beneath the headlines was a systems conflict. Financial pressure versus engineering caution. Deadlines began outranking warnings. Efficiency targets began shaping safety margins. When spreadsheets override structural integrity, friction becomes fatal. Systems rarely collapse from one catastrophic decision. They collapse from accumulated compromises that leadership normalizes over time. Now examine the Everything app through that same forensic lens. When one platform attempts to unify messaging, payments, content distribution, commerce, and identity management, it introduces competing priorities inside a single architecture: engagement versus security, speed versus compliance, monetization versus clarity, virality versus trust. Each objective pulls the system in a different direction. Complexity grows exponentially, not linearly. And exponential complexity is extremely difficult to control. Supporters point to WeChat as proof that the model works. But context is everything. WeChat rose during a mobile-first expansion in a market where integrated digital infrastructure was still forming. It wasn't displacing deeply entrenched specialists. It was becoming the foundation before they fully solidified. Timing, ecosystem structure, and regulatory alignment all played roles. The Western digital landscape is different. It is saturated with dominant specialists. Messaging has incumbents. Professional networking has incumbents. E-commerce has incumbents. Payments have incumbents. Each niche is defended aggressively. In mature markets, specialization thrives because it reduces friction. Users instinctively segment their lives to reduce mental strain. They separate financial identity from social identity, professional image from private conversation. This compartmentalization is not inefficiency, it is psychological protection. The Everything app attempts to reverse that compartmentalization. It promises unity, but unity increases exposure. A controversy in one domain can contaminate trust in another. A security scare in payments can ripple into social engagement. A political dispute can influence transaction behavior. When all identities are fused, all risks are fused. The blast radius expands. Convenience has limits. The first layer of integration feels magical. The second feels helpful. But beyond a certain threshold, additional integration produces diminishing returns. The brain begins calculating effort instead of benefit. If managing 3 separate clean apps feels calmer than navigating one dense environment, users will choose calm. Humans optimize for psychological stability before theoretical efficiency. This is the bloat zone, the moment when a system expands faster than its clarity. Features stack, interfaces crowd, notifications multiply, objectives conflict. Internally, teams juggle incompatible mandates. Engineers manage expanding dependencies. Compliance teams negotiate evolving regulations. Product teams chase engagement metrics that may contradict long-term trust. The system becomes heavier, and heavy systems struggle to pivot. X-Corp is attempting transformation under intense visibility and competitive pressure. Adding payments, commerce, and broader identity layers increases regulatory exposure and architectural strain simultaneously. Each expansion point introduces new friction surfaces, technical, psychological, and operational. Managing that friction is not a marketing challenge. It is a structural one. There is a deeper question beneath all of this. Can technology override biological constraints? Innovation can reshape habits. It can accelerate adoption. It can redefine markets. But it rarely erases cognitive limits. The tension remains finite. Trust remains fragile. Context switching remains metabolically expensive. Systems that ignore these constraints may scale rapidly, but they also accumulate invisible stress, and stress accumulates quietly. Engagement dips slightly. Session times fluctuate. Adoption slows at the margins. None of these signals appear catastrophic alone, but together they form a pattern. By the time the pattern becomes obvious, complexity makes reversal difficult. Heavy systems resist simplification. Integrated architectures are harder to untangle than modular ones. The Everything app is not inherently doomed. It is inherently risky. Its success depends not on ambition, but on friction management. Can it integrate without overwhelming? Can it unify without blurring identity boundaries? Can it expand without eroding clarity? Those are not branding questions. They are psychological engineering questions. Elon Musk is betting that integration will feel empowering rather than exhausting. That scale will generate gravitational pull strong enough to override specialization. That users will embrace identity compression instead of resisting it. It is a bold wager, but boldness does not neutralize biology. History offers a consistent lesson. Empires do not collapse because they lack vision. They collapse because complexity outpaces control. They collapse because friction accumulates faster than leadership can remove it. They collapse because scale disguises strain, until strain becomes visible. The critical question is not whether the Everything app can be built. It can. Code can integrate. Infrastructure can scale. The real question is whether the human brain will tolerate the density, whether merging every digital role into one environment will feel liberating or suffocating. In the battle between massive capital and cognitive limits, capital often assumes it can reshape behavior indefinitely, but behavior shapes systems just as powerfully. When users feel overloaded, they don't negotiate, they retreat. And when retreat scales across millions, even the largest platform feels it. X may redefine digital integration, or it may discover that friction compounds faster than ambition anticipates. The difference will not be decided by marketing campaigns or feature announcements. It will be decided by whether human psychology bends or pushes back. Every empire believes it is the exception. Every complex system assumes it can manage one more layer. But complexity has gravity, and gravity eventually pulls on everything. If you want to understand how invisible forces, cognitive tax, systemic friction, structural bloat, quietly determine which companies rise and which fall, you must look beyond headlines and hype. Because long before collapse becomes obvious, friction is already at work, and friction, when ignored, always wins.